Thanks for having me.
So the last time you were on, we spent a lot of time just talking about pornography, if I recall.
We did. I mean, I normally try to start conversations with strangers that way. Like, I feel like it breaks the ice, but you really ran with it.
Well, and also you've run with it in this new book because you get pornography in there a little bit.
I tried.
In the book, you talk about early '90s porn. You
Yeah.
know that, judging by the
The variation, yeah.
the variation, you've seen that, and so I'm having trouble with this interview because I don't know what I can talk about. So I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
What can I talk about?
It's tricky because it's kind of a twisty book, and I finished it and I thought, yay, I wrote a book that I can't talk about at
Right.
all safely.
There are
And
people in it
there are
who do things, some of which are bad.
Exactly.
And
Some
everybody
bad
loves-
things happen, and it's super awesome.
Yeah. So there are two main characters,
Yeah.
Nick and Amy. We can say that.
I have figured out how to boil this
Do
down.
it.
So
Do
let
it.
me take it
away.
over. Yeah.
Take it away.
It takes place a husband and wife on their 5-year anniversary. The wife disappears under very mysterious circumstances, very suspicious.
Anytime somebody disappears, it's usually
Right.
suspicious.
That's a very good point. It's suspicious for the husband, looks bad
Right.
for the husband, and it's told in alternating points of view, from the husband's point of view, from the day she goes missing, and also from the wife's diary, from the early courtship on to the day she goes missing. And it becomes pretty clear that you're dealing with two people who may or may not be telling the truth in all ways.
Right. They're both very unreliable narrators, if that's the correct term. But you also kind of know that the guy didn't do it, right? You pretty much think the guy didn't know. You don't
Do
think.
you?
Yeah, I do. But no, you do. You do. I mean, he would have to be really unreliable
Really, yeah.
because he's telling the story of what's happening.
Yeah.
So anyway, the characters. The woman is a fascinating character in that she's the daughter of two psychologists who also wrote a series of famous children's books.
Yeah.
About
Kind of based on her. Yeah.
based on her, but about who they hoped she would be. Amazing Amy. She's
Yeah.
Amy. The character is Amazing Amy. And then he's a guy from Missouri who moves to New York.
Woo!
Yeah, you're from Missouri. Yeah, you have to say Missouri.
Missouri, yeah, please.
Why?
Have some respect.
Sorry.
You're showing your ignorance.
Or it's the other way around.
Let's go back to porn. That was
Porn. So in the 90s, it was like a landing strip thing. It was. And the guy, Nick, he's from Missouri. He had moved to New York.
Yep.
Became a magazine writer.
Mm-hmm.
Then he gets laid off, as is the way of the world now. By the way, I have to say that in the past books, nobody mentioned that you had been laid off from Entertainment Weekly. Now everybody mentions that you.
Well, I don't think I'd been laid off yet.
Oh, for the second book?
Had I? No, you're right, for Dark Places, yeah.
How do you
I think
feel
I
about
had
that every article talks about you getting laid off from the job?
You know, I'm over it now, but had it been a couple years ago, it would have been like, come on.
Yeah. Like you don't usually
Well,
mention that.
painful,
Most
yeah.
articles about people don't mention where they've been laid off from.
Right, yeah. Bad. Here's some bad things that happened to
Yeah.
this person.
So they go to, that's where he meets Amy. She's a New Yorker through and through, total Manhattanite.
Yeah.
And his mom gets very ill, and so he's also been laid off. They've
They're
got
both
nothing
laid
to
off,
do.
yeah.
They're both laid off, and he basically decides we're moving back to Missouri,
Mhm.
to my hometown.
Mhm.
And what's interesting about it is the hometown is kind of going through the same things that he's going through.
Yeah.
He's kind of a vestige of an earlier age when magazine writers could get jobs easily. And the town is also a vestige of a place where you could have retail. It was a big mall in the town.
Yeah,
There was a
the town had
factory.
kind of been built around this mega mall, and now the mega mall has gone bankrupt, and thus the town, yeah.
And a blue book factory. Those blue
Yeah.
books people would write in it for exams. So what was the appeal or what was the attraction of writing something about people who were dealing with a time gone,
Yeah.
people whose time was past, it seems?
Yeah, I mean, I started writing it during the height of the recession, and I was laid off, and as were many of my friends who were in journalism, as you know, you're constantly getting these phone calls. This magazine's shut down, you know, this kind of thing, and as were many people in many industries, And I did want to have that feeling of heading to this town, have this town be just, there was nothing about it that was working, and that sense. And Nick, the main character, does talk about that. Like, I brought my wife to the end of everything, the end of our careers, the end of a way of life, and that idea of not being able to kind of figure out what the second act is. What do you do? I certainly, I'm a writer because I don't know how to do anything else. I mean, I am not good at anything else. I definitely had that moment where I thought, before I was a writer, I was a waitress and I was really bad at it. So it's like I don't know.
What makes one a bad waitress?
I was just scatterbrained. I was like I had a lot of heart, but not a lot of skill.
Sure.
I was like one of those. Oh, you ordered the drink? Ooh, sorry, I'm from Missouri. God. Before that, I dressed as a yogurt cone in a mall, like in high school.
Sure.
And wrapped and unwrapped hams at Honey Baked Hams. So that is the extent of my job resume. So the ham, I think there will always be ham. So I could probably go back to that.
Wait, what did you do with the hams? You just unwrapped them?
You display the hams, so people are very picky about their hams. So you take them out and you unwrap them very carefully, and you always have Band-Aids on your fingers because you're always cut by the foil. And so you have all these Band-Aids and you're like, look at the ham. Would you like this ham? No, I wouldn't like that ham. Okay, let's look at a different ham. The spiral cut is very nice on this ham. No.
I'm a Jew. What is, I mean, I know what it is. I've had a ham sandwich. But you're talking about the big blocks of ham?
Big old ham,
Who
yeah.
buys those? Do people still buy those?
A lot of people buy those.
It's like little candy.
I have not eaten ham since that job, but they're very. It's very sweet, and the whole thing is a spiral cut. It's a beautiful piece of meat art.
It's for Christmas, right? You eat it on
Christmas or
Christmas
Easter,
ham
yeah.
or Easter. You eat it and other days?
I think maybe just for fun.
Okay, so
it's a slow Saturday night.
Given that about ham, Nick brings Amy back to Missouri, and she clearly does not belong in Missouri.
Yes.
And she
is not happy in any way to be back there yet.
And part of what's I think what people love about the book is that not only is it a thriller, but you really get into the disintegration of a relationship.
Yeah.
What's the challenge? I've read thrillers, I've read novels that are very relationship driven. Was it from the beginning a challenge? Can I do both?
I did. I wanted to kind of write Mirrors as a whodunit, sort of a whodunit, what happened to Amy, and also a whodunit as in who messed up this marriage. And these are two writers, so each of them are writing in first person, and each of them are vying for your favor. I wanted to feel like whoever chapter you were in,
that's exactly it.
You were sort of like, it's like being trapped in the war between bickering friends.
No, yeah, you're like, what a dick that guy is, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, not so much a dick. I would have done that.
Yeah, should have put the toilet seat down.
Yeah. Did you? One of the things that is interesting about the marriage is they both, in different ways, lied to one another about who they were before the marriage, leading up to it. Do you think that is something that happens? Is that a pitfall of marriage, that 3 years into a marriage you realize, hey, the person I fell in love with or thought I fell in love with is actually not that person?
Well, I think everyone, while they're dating, presents various degrees of the awesomer self that they wish they were. I don't think you're always necessarily setting out to trick someone into marrying you or dating you, but we always present, if you presented the person you actually are, who would ever love you? You have to trick someone into marrying you, and then they're trapped with you, and they see it as an endearing foible, as opposed to like, oh wow.
Yeah, I guess the key is eventually when the foibles come out, at first you love the foibles.
Not that far off the mark. Yeah, exactly.
And then once you start hating the foibles, that's
the problem.
Or the key is just to say, all right, I hate that foible, but I love so much else that I'm going to ignore that foible.
Yeah,
or
this
try
is
to
the other side of the coin. Like this is, because very often it's like the thing that drives you crazy goes hand in hand with the thing that you love, and if you can recognize that. But.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about my own marriage right now. One thing that Nick says is he says he felt that he was at his best Nickness when he was with Amy. But then he says, like a page later, at a certain point that became too much to handle. What is that something that you felt? What attracted you about that idea in a marriage that it's not that you fell in love with somebody at their best, as you just said, they present their best face, but then you have to keep trying to show that best face.
Yeah, I mean, he says, is love wanting to be the best person that you can be, or is love being able to be the person that you are and feeling love? And that's their constant battle. Is she doesn't necessarily believe in unconditional love. She believes that love should be, everyone should be trying their best because she's a very alpha girl, and everyone should be on their game all the time, and that is a sign of disrespect to not be at your best. And he comes from the very opposite place of that unconditional love, and like, you should love me for the good stuff and all this other mediocre stuff that I bring to the table.
Which is a norm.
That's yeah.
One thing that's interesting though, both characters, and I think this is coming through already, is that both characters you think, yeah, that's a real person. I relate to that person, or not if I don't relate to that person, I know that person.
Yeah.
But then it turns out, and I won't say which, one of them is really like batshit insane. So, do you think there's a fine line between somebody who you just relate to and you think is pretty normal and insanity?
Wow, getting deep.
Dude.
Yeah,
I do. The book is deep.
I do. I think, I think there is kind of that fine line. I think most people have known someone where you've kind of known them for a while, and all of a sudden, like, the mask starts slipping, and you're like, whoa, like, I gotta get out of here. You present a very normal front, but wow.
On the other hand, you've talked about this. There was a great column by Mary Schmeek about you in the Tribune the other day, and I think you had a quote where it said, I feel like I'm a sweet, nice person who usually ends up doing the right thing, but I also have my natural instincts is to have a lot of dark thoughts.
Yeah.
But that's got to be true for everybody, right? I mean, that's not...
I think it's absolutely true for everyone, but I think there is this idea that women are kind of naturally good. There's this idea that women have this maternal instinct and this kind of, we're the peacemakers and this sort of idea. And I really hate that idea because it doesn't give us credit for how hard it is to be a good person. I mean, I want the credit for all the effort I put into doing the right thing. I don't want it to be like, oh, that's her natural state.
Right.
Like, I work hard at it.
But then there's like the femme fatale.
Yeah.
Or that's maybe that stands out because it's in opposition to...
I think, yeah, exactly.
Do you think if women ran the world, that it would be, if they were the leaders in most countries, that it would be just as bad as it is now?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like to think so.
So the book, let's talk about a little bit about your life. The book has taken off. The last two books did well too, but this one clearly is in a different stratosphere. Have you been able, is anything different? Have you been able to have a summer, or is it?
No, it's been a great busy summer, but a busy summer, and it hasn't quite sunk in entirely yet. I still I want to see it in the wild. I haven't seen the book yet. Someone holding it. What?
Yeah.
Why, sir?
Yeah.
Are you ready to go?
You haven't seen somebody just on the train?
That's what I mean. Yeah, or the park, or So I need to sort of just start lurking in places.
Would you ever
that's not
would you
weird at
ever
all.
tap them on the shoulder and say, if you have any questions about the book?
That's what I would love to do. I only have that with my.
You should say, I will kill you. You should pretend.
Be afraid. Then just walk away. Might do that. No, I saw someone read Dark Places one time at an airport bar, and I was all proud and went up and was like, "Hi, I'm the author of that book." And he was like, "I'm only reading because I had a blurb from Harlan Coben." And he seemed really angry and was like, "I was like, oh, I'm sorry."
Well, that's an interesting thing, because now all of a sudden you are being probably confronted with so many people talking about something that you lived with for
a
so
long
long, and it's out of your hands at this point in a way. I mean, it's still yours, but
Yeah, no, it is strange because I have a little office in our basement, and it took me a long time to write this book. It just did. I wrote and rewrote, and so you've already kind of spent a couple years, and then it goes out into the world, and it does seem like this entirely different entity. I think just because you're not present with it, like I said, you're not seeing it in places necessarily. I don't know. It's a strange, different feeling. Like figure it out, but this one took me. I made it hard on myself. I just wrote myself in circles a lot.
if you're like a fiction professor will always say, everything that's in the book, everything that's in the story, has to be there for a very specific reason. It propels the story, or do you ever just put something in there because you're like, that's fun?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, I put the entire empty, abandoned shopping mall, the big bankrupt shopping mall, because I'm a fan of like 80s apocalyptic movies, and I was like, there has to be an abandoned shopping mall. And then it was like, as soon as there was the abandoned shopping mall, I was like, we have to go inside the abandoned shopping mall. We have to figure out a way in. And so that entire scene, it's not really there for any reason except that I wanted all the characters to be running around at the abandoned shopping mall because it's awesome.
Is that happening all over the Midwest?
I did a lot of research, and it's happening in different places, those big mega malls, because people, there's the internet, and there was the recession, and there's the big box stores that are going different places, and they're in those real big mega malls are having trouble.
You live in Chicago, you've lived in New York, I know you're from Missouri, but is it tricky to write about a part of the country, small towns in the Midwest that are obviously going through tough times? Is it hard to write about those without? Did you find yourself being like, oh, that's a cliche, I can't do that,
yeah.
or I'm going to offend people with that?
Yeah.
Or did those things go through your mind?
It's the Midwest and the suburbs too, and those are two places that are very easily kind of cliched and parodied. And I like the Midwest, and I always return to the Midwest in my fiction because it's the great underexploited spot in literature. I mean, it's easier for me to write a sort of gothic Midwest, and that's what I always, it's sort of a heightened version of these big empty places where you drive partway through Missouri and find this spot and there's nothing else around, and you drive more, and I've always liked those towns. Originally the book was set in Chicago, and it didn't quite work because I wanted that sense of not being able to reinvent yourself, which is what happens in a small town. Why I think a certain kind of violence happens in a small town, because there's that inability to remake yourself, to make new friends, to go in a new circle. You're known from age 5 exactly who this person is, whether or not that's true. A certain narrative is being written for you that you can't escape. That's from what happened as the kind of kid you are. Everyone knows that sort of thing. So to me that was kind of interesting. And Nick, that's part of Nick's problem, is actually he was the golden boy of the town, and he has a certain lack of buoyancy because of it. He doesn't know how to deal with anything negative because he's always kind of everything's been great for Nikki. Because it's that danger.
Amy doesn't really know either.
No. That's the disaster of them. Is they're the typical golden couple who actually doesn't know how to deal with anything but just awesomeness and success and wonderful positive feedback. Which it's more dangerous sometimes than having to deal with some heartbreak and some hard knocks.
I was thinking with Amy, she's kind of the original. The parents wrote this book that glorifies her. She's kind of the original. Now we talk about parents raising kids and just praising them to the hilt. And then are we? Do you think
no wrong generation?
We're raising a bunch of
Amy's.
Amy's.
I did want it to kind of feel that way, that sense of that there is something dangerous in not knowing how to work your way out of a problem and not knowing how to pick yourself up off the floor. That is almost as dangerous as having a lot of challenges and hardship, that in its way, because you just don't know how to deal with real life, and she finds that out very quickly, that she, as brilliant as she thinks she is, she doesn't really quite know how to function in a real world.
Yeah, I think Nick says at one point that, as smart as she is, she doesn't have a bullshit meter.
Yeah.
If you say to her, hey, you are so beautiful, she'll be like, yeah, I'm beautiful. I know that. She won't know that you're fucking with her if
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah.
So last question, a thriller often comes down in many people's minds to what's going to happen to the ending. I mean, obviously there's the ride, there's the enjoyment. I love the ending, I thought it was great. But I could also see people being like, no, you can't do that to my characters, these characters I've lived with. Are you hearing from people both sides?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of Facebook like
Go.
I'm trying to figure out how to say it without spoiling the ending, but vaguely ominous emails like, we need to talk about the ending. Like, I'm sorry. People, it's an anytime I think people either really love or, they want more resolution, they want a little more specificity.
They know it's not real. Though.
I think they know it's not real, I hope so, yeah.
You're a true crime fan.
Yeah.
Should people feel guilty about reading true crime as opposed to a fiction book? You're like, okay, these aren't real people. But with true crime, you're like, I'm getting off on the fact that this person was hacked to death.
No, exactly. I mean, I'm a true crime person, and to the point where I have to watch my intake.
Yeah.
And I think the important thing to remember is, first of all, we've always been interested in true crime. I mean, but there are murder ballads from the 1800s. The penny press was founded on it. I mean, this interest is not a new thing.
We've been terrible for a long time.
We've been obsessed with the tragedy for forever, and I think in a way, it's fine in the way it helps us make sense of our lives and make sense of certain relationships, and I think there's a reason people get attached to certain cases. What I always do is just remind myself that when you are reading or watching a TV program, you are, in the way, a consumer of someone else's tragedy, and that you should be a responsible consumer, and that you should not just watch stuff that immediately goes to the worst aspects of
well, there's
true
like
crime.
a Nancy Grace type character in the book.
There's this sense that there has to be a story now to everything. It used to be that true crime books were written after the fact. There was a verdict, we knew what had happened, and now there's this necessity to have a hero and a villain and repeat it, and I think that's kind of dangerous.
You know what? I think it was at its best. You had the early days, but then the OJ. OJ was awesome. It was so entertaining, and it was. And then if OJ had happened now, it would be too much.
Yeah.
But it was kind of pre-internet. OJ was just
right.
It was perfect.
It was
perfect. What's next? Did you have a chance to just sit back and do nothing for a while, or did you get right back into writing?
I'm writing the screenplay for Gone Girl,
right.
the movie. Yeah.
Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah. So
I can totally see her as Amy.
I can too. I'm super excited.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. No, so like if you've seen Election, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, like Tracy flick.
So what's the?
This will be fantastic.
What's you sign a deal to do a movie and then it comes out 25 years later.
Right.
Could this come out in the next year or 2 years?
I mean, that is the hope. They seem very intent on fast tracking it, and I'm the only one holding it up right now. I need to start on the screenplay, and which is a different beast than a book is, and so kind of dismantle the book and put together what works for the film, and it'll be really fun. I'm the daughter of a film professor, so I grew up on movies, and I'm very excited about doing that.
That's awesome. Congratulations on the book.
Thanks.
The book's for sale from the bookseller out there. Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. Thank you so much for that.